One of the reasons that I've personally felt so passionately about opposing this illiberal ideology, which goes by many names. We've been talking about the gender aspect of it during this conversation, but it's called wokeness or the successor ideology. I don't really care what we call it. Is is not just because I oppose it on its own merits or demerits. It's because I deeply fear the backlash that I believe will come in response to it. Because anyone who knows anything about history, think obviously about Germany in the 1920s, but there are other examples, knows that when a society becomes crazily decadent, as I think ours is, that the thing that comes to challenge it is not liberalism. It's deeply retrograde and repressive. And, given the choice between left wing extremism and right wing extremism, many people choose the right. And there's this really amazing quote from Camille Paglia, who says, people who live in such decadent times feel they're very sophisticated, they're very cosmopolitan. But in truth, they're evidence of a civilization that no longer believes in itself. And on the edges of that civilization, she says, are people who still believe in heroic masculinity. And she doesn't mean that in a laudatory way. She means that in a real rough way. So one of the reasons that I have felt the need, even though I'm accused of fueling the backlash myself, to push back against the illiberal left is because I believe that its excesses are going to give rise to something very scary on the right. Like when things become chaotic and structureless and words have no meaning and there are no differences between men and women, people react by going extremely hardcore in the other direction, like the violent imposition of rules and structure and hierarchy at all costs. And I worry that that's where we could be going.
Yes, that has often been a worry. And what frustrates me most is simply the refusal to even acknowledge that that could be a factor. So, in fact, it's always treated as if the right-wing reaction is out of any context, that we've done nothing to deserve this, nothing to provoke this. I don't know what they're talking about. Critical race theory in high school? It's completely untrue, the New York Times says, even as it pushes its own critical race theory project into high schools around the country. They don't acknowledge that they have played a role in creating Trump. They've played a role in creating Le Pen and Zemmour. They've played a role in creating some very ugly strains of illiberal conservatism. And it's happening here. You can see it with DeSantis. You can see it with Chris Rufo, who I think did important work and has done important work, and I'm grateful for him. But the way he thrills to the exercise of raw power gets me a little nervous, to say the least. And if it's a contest purely for power, if truth is out the window, there's no reason to be asserted, then the people who are better at enforcing their physical power will tend to win. And they tend to be on the far right.
But the reason I think that Chris Rufo, who has done amazing work exposing what's going on, let's say, in schools and corporations, they'll basically say, you know what, Sully, in a perfect world, we would respond to the excesses of the left with reason, with common sense, with deliberation. But all they know is power. All they force on us is power. They say we're barbarians. They say we're, bigots, racists. They haven't hesitated to call us Nazis for believing in the right to free speech. So if that's the language they understand, that's the language we're going to speak to them in. And I understand how they get there.
I do too.